21 years ago this week, Nicaragua witnessed a dramatic end to 11 years of left-wing revolutionary rule by the Sandinista Liberation Front. Mike Lanchin was there.
It's February 26, 1990, the morning after Nicaragua's first democratic elections. Though the country is crippled by civil war and economic ruin, everyone expects the left-wing Sandinista government to win by a convincing margin. But then Violeta Chamorro, the candidate of the main right-wing opposition parties, appears on the radio with this triumphant announcement.
The National Opposition Unity has, at this moment, 53.7% of the votes. I'd like to congratulate all of us.
The question then was, would Daniel Ortega, leader of the FSLN, the Sandinista party, accept the results? Supported by Cuba and the Soviet Union, he'd been president of Nicaragua for the past 11 years. Looking weary and surrounded by weeping party members, he spoke on national television.
We went to these elections of February 25th, 1990, convinced that this battle on the electoral field had to decide once and for all the end of the war, to bring peace, tranquility to the Nicaraguan people.
I saw Ortega on television and I find that speech by him one of the best that he ever did, with dignity. And on the other side, it was very important to accept the defeat, not to play with the results, not to make any kind of allegations of fraud, to say it in a very straightforward way. Well, yes, we lost, and this is it.
That morning, Carlos Chamorro was at the offices of the Sandinistas newspaper, Barricada, where he was the editor. A committed left-winger, he now found himself in an extremely difficult position, because he was also the youngest son of Violeta Chamorro, the president-elect. Like many Nicaraguan families, the Chamorros, prominent newspaper owners, had for many years been deeply divided along political lines. Carlos and one of his sisters were high-profile FSLN party members. His brother Pedro was a political leader of the US-backed Contras, fighting to overthrow the Sandinistas. Another sister, Cristina, worked at the family's fiercely anti-Sandinista newspaper, La Prensa.
My mother was, I would say, above all of us and above all the ideological and political differences. She tried to maintain the family together. She tried to maintain communication. But even in my relationship with her, there were some periods of tremendous tension, and it was very difficult. I think it was a tremendous human challenge.
What used to happen, Carlos, when the family would get together during those days? I don't know, for family celebrations or for Christmas or for New Year, that sort of the typical family get-together moments.
Before the war, it was much more possible to talk about politics and to have discussions. But when the war was the dominant reality of Nicaragua, well, it was very difficult to talk about these kind of issues. So we will try to maintain communication on basic family issues, but we were confronted.
Tensions in the Chamorro family naturally increased when Violeta entered the presidential race. La Prensa was often accused by the Sandinistas of being a US mouthpiece, and Barricada, where Carlos was editor, kept up a constant stream of attacks on his mother.
I said to myself, well, this is a tragedy, because even though I could rationalize and say, well, I'm here supporting the revolution because I have this political and ideological commitment, and this is not a personal struggle against any other individual, well, it is not nice to have on the other side a person that you love deeply and very much, that you owe many things to her, and that she will be the candidate that you are trying to defeat.
Carlos, like many others in Nicaragua at the time, simply believed his mother had no chance of winning, until the first exit polls reached him on the afternoon of election day.
By 6 or 7 o'clock, I went to the FSLN headquarters, where one of the main, let's say, political advisors had a sample that indicated that the FSLN was losing, but they only had something like 5% of the vote, and everybody else in the room was saying, well, 5% is not representative, it's not enough, we have to wait. And this guy, who was an expert in statistics, said, well, 5% is enough. And And I doubt that this will change. So,
and what was the atmosphere in the room amongst the other leaders and amongst the people you were with?
Some sort of disbelief of not wanting to accept reality.
What did you feel was the reason that that the FSLN had got it so wrong? Because you were pretty convinced that you were going to win, weren't you?
I had to recognize that we were a little bit, or probably a lot, or too much detached from reality. Nicaragua was a country that was split, and yes, there were a lot of supporters for the FSLN and the project of the revolution, but there were also a lot of people that opposed it.
Do you think in some ways you believed your own propaganda too much?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And as the results became clear in the early hours of the next morning, Carlos had one more testing task ahead.
I received a call by people from the FSLN headquarters, and they asked me to go with Daniel Ortega to my mother's house, in which he would communicate personally to her the acceptance of his defeat. So I went there, and it was a very emotive, very emotional moment because, I came back. I went back to my house, the house where I grew up. Well, we had some very brief conversation. She and I remember I told her, well, Mom, you won and you have a tremendous responsibility to lead this country, and congratulations, something like that.
Was there a part of you, Carlos, that felt a tiny little bit proud of your mother?
Yes, but I would say I was still in shock. I mean, my feelings at that moment were more like a member of the FSLN, and my allegiances, my loyalty was more with those who have been defeated, and I was trying to see how the future would like in terms of difficult questions in a political transition, like, okay, you won, I lost, so how do we organize the transfer of power? There was a lot of concern about these kind of things.
Many of those concerns proved unfounded. Civil war didn't break out again. In fact, under the Chamorro government, tens of thousands of Contra fighters handed in their weapons. The Sandinistas retained a stake in the police and the army and continued the political fight, but as an opposition party in Congress. Foreign investment, constrained under Sandinista rule, returned, as did political pluralism. And for Carlos, he could at last speak of his mother with pride.
My evaluation of her as a public figure changed drastically when she became a president, and when I saw the capability that she had, the instinct that she had to become, a stateswoman. And I think she ended up leading probably the best government that Nicaragua have had in history.
And those elections then changed your life forever, changed Nicaragua's life as well.
I think at least you can say categorically that electoral democracy was established in Nicaragua that day. For the first time, we had a transfer of power without having violence. And that created a new climate in Nicaragua to deal with political contradictions.
Carlos later split with the Sandinistas. He now has his own TV chat show and is highly critical of Daniel Ortega, who eventually won back the presidency in 2006. Violeta Chamorro is now in retirement.
Carlos Chamorro was talking to Mike Lanchin for Witness.